Welcome to Deconstructed. This is the podcast where we take you through teams and tell you why they're shit or why they're quite good. I'm your host, Sam Animo Mackenzie, and we've got our expert analyst, HLTV hero, Parry Piero Pitchards with us. So, the first episode is going to be on Astralis, and I guess the best place to start is uh, how do we get to the team we've got now?
Right. Well, you've gone in strong there. It's a good opening for you. It's a good opening for you. It
Cheers, mate.
really is.
Cheers,
Yeah,
mate.
yeah. You're welcome. Uh, so yeah, this is Astralis 2 basically. So we've got the good Astralis, the old Astralis, and then this is sort of the new core of Astralis, isn't it? So I'd say it's probably Blamef, Glaive, Zipex is somehow the core of this team now, and make of that what you will. So it's like,
Gross.
well, it is. It is. If you look at it with the free man all the way back, it is.
No, it is, but can
It
we
is.
pretend it's device just for the sake of
Well,
Astralis?
he had a little break, didn't he?
A little
So
bit,
I don't think we can.
a little bit.
Mm.
Hmm.
So yeah, so they cut Megas Gonna Do Pre back in October 2021, I think,
Put the right
around then.
word.
Well, removed,
They
parted
they
ways. We'll do parted
refreshed the
ways.
roster.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay.
Mm,
Oh, I'm gonna kill you now.
good line
Um,
that.
so yeah, that whole team's gone, and then he brought in Blame F and Config and Lucky, and that was a thing for a long time, and nothing happened. They literally did nothing.
Very fun.
Got top four at Cologne. Had that Blast full finals run, and then Config did what he did, and then they didn't qualify for Rio. And then that is why we have the new team. So Castle comes in as coach, basically gives Blame F the old config roles. Um, Glaive gets back some of the CT roles he used to have. So, all the excuses for why he wasn't killing anyone are now gone. Zip went back to his old T-side roles. And then they bring in Buzz, who Device pugged with a few times, and Device, who is the best player of all time.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's why, and now we're here.
Yeah, so I think in terms of 2023 so far, like it's kind of hard to gauge where Astralis is at. Like, you know, Kato was probably the biggest chance to see where teams are at so far, and because Pro League doesn't count, and of course Astralis just weren't there. So I guess Pro League has to count in this instance, and for me, Pro League's kind of encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, so it's one of those things you need to set expectations, don't you? So Device hasn't played in a long time. Buzz is very fresh, and this is literally they played two lands basically, two real lands. So they've had Blast Spring groups where they qualified actually, and then EPL where they lost to Spirit, Navi, and I think Liquid was the decider.
Yeah, they
Yeah, so they've lost to quite good teams, but they have lost three times in the group stage. So
I do think
it's
I do think though the thing that's worth saying about those losses is it does also involve a 16-3 win against Navi. And like yeah, they
mm,
lost, but like they're not gonna it's a good showing for what they could be if they have the potential to beat a team like Navi 16-3.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to analyze a Na'Vi match because it always seems like they're losing to themselves rather than they're losing to Astralis. But I think that game, that was when Buzz had like a 1.90 rating, and then I think from every other game he's played, he's probably not going to be that type of player. Like his LAN rating this year is like below zero point 0.9, I think. So like that's not something we'd expect a lot of, but it's like you're right, it's promising. They've lost to teams that should beat them, and Device and Blame F have looked okay. They've not looked amazing, like because online they're looking very, very good. Like they're playing a lot of these online cups to try and qualify for things like Kata because they need the points. So they won the Dallas qualifier, I think. So they're going to be at Dallas. So they'll have the Dallas and then the RML's coming up, of course. So it's like they're trying to get those ranking points back because you're right. If you don't play those events, you don't get that experience, and then you don't get better. And they definitely need more playtime. Like Device and Buzz, especially, just need time in the server, I think, before you can judge them properly.
Yeah, I mean especially like Buzz because Buzz is like, he's kind of in the team to be this sort of third best player. I think it's kind of fair.
Mm.
Like at worst fourth, and at the moment we're not. At least it feels like we're not really getting that. But obviously, he's come in on the on Device's recommendation. Like there's got to be something there because Device is one of, if not the greatest player in CS:GO. So there's no way he's
Well,
just gonna let them pick up a bum, even if they have to play with one anyway. Naming no names.
he's done it already. But yeah, I think that's the thing with Buzz. He's come in and he's been in a team with Zipix and Glaive. Like he's now is the third best player, and online he is being the third best player. Like he's got like a 1.16 rating, I think. He's online. He is being that third piece to blame and device. But it's one of those like every other like you think of the top teams now. Who's the fourth best player on all these teams? Like G2, JKS, Navi probably Perfecto a bit depending on how based you are. FaZe, Rain. Um, so it's like the top teams have at least four people who could be star players, right? And Astralis have two. So that's where the issue is, and it's not Buzz's fault that he's not as good as those people because like you shouldn't expect him to. They've picked him up for quite cheap from well pretty cheap
Well, I mean,
compared to other players that they
no,
could
I
have
mean
got.
more. Like Bit came in and pretty good, wasn't he? Like, I feel like there's some blame, but that's just me.
Who would you have got
Well,
instead of
so do
Buzz?
you remember there was that point where they tried to buy a player from I think it's a German organisation, and that German organisation told them to fuck off. Like, there was that part.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But
We'll get
anyway,
to
now Buzz is in the team. Is he the reason they're losing games? I don't think so. Not really.
that.
He's not doing much, but
Yeah,
they've got two pretty heavy anchors
that's fair to
worse than
say.
him at the moment. So yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. So Zifix and Glaive. So the thing with Glaive is that I think you can have either of them as your worst player, but you have both of them. You've got two Hooksies at the moment, and that's obviously not something that can work. And I think a lot of the blame probably has to be on Glaive for that because back in the 2018-19 team, he was outside on Nuke. Like he was the star rifler on CT side basically. Like he was the one making plays. He's always been like a lot of info gathering, but that team he was doing a lot of that. And now like he played Con Mirage, and then obviously Blame F comes in, takes a lot of those roles. Um,
As he should.
so that as he should, yeah, as he should. But then this year, because they've lost Config, who played a lot of those roles, and they've brought in Buzz, who they've given a lot of the old Glaive roles. So like he's like A on Mirage, things like that, like big site anchoring. So then Glaive now has a lot of the active roles back, but his ratings aren't reflecting that. So it's like, what are you supposed to do when you've got a player who clearly needs to make plays to be able to call properly? Like he needs to be quite active, but he's just not killing enough people to justify those roles anymore. Because the solution for some people might just be, well, you cut Zipix and you just put Glaive on Beyond Mirage, things like that. But I'm not sure he's the type of player who can actually do that properly. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, but okay. If we're talking about him as an IGL, then yeah, there is probably something to say that on CT side, the way he would call and the way he would move people about and setups and these type of things probably was very dependent on the information that he was getting from playing those roles. But are we forgetting the fact that Blame F also got like what 3 years of pretty high level IGL experience? Like if it's that difficult, like just let the bloke, and I'm sure he does anyway, but let the bloke have more of a voice on those
Mm.
CT sites. Like Glaive goes back into the positions where he's still helpful to the team and less of a sandbag, and Blame F steps up and just does more. Like that, to me, that's the logical decision.
Yeah, but that doesn't solve Glaive killing more people. I think that's the thing. You need two star rifles on
But
CT side, and
but what
Astralis
if you
just don't
don't?
have that.
But what if? Yeah, but so in this hypothetical, you know, Zip is gone. Who they replace
Okay.
Zip with? Let's say Xiphon. Xiphon's a better player than Zip. Immediately you've got more fragging potential, and then at that point you've got. And I'm not saying that that makes him equivalent to G2, but then immediately you've got a core of like Device and Blame, who are both stars, and then you've got Xiphon, who's shown the potential to be a strong player, and then if you factor in the hope that Buzz elevates his LAN performances to his online performances, like it's suddenly a far better prospect.
It's just one of those things. It's like if you talk about Glaive as an IGL, it's he hasn't really done anything for a long time, and it's like I know there's people who will. It's hard to judge IGLs whether they're in bad form or not because it's not like individual form. You can't just watch them and say, oh, he's washed up, like he's not killing anyone anymore because it's one of those things. I feel like I have faith in Glaive. Like if Glaive has the right pieces, and you can argue he's had decent pieces, but not like it's hard to be motivated by in a team with Lucky and Config when you used to have the best team of all time. So it's one of those things. I think he had a kid. He's come back now. He's kind of a kid. He's come back now. He should be. If they put a good team around him, I think he'll be motivated enough to be a proper IGL again. And it's like he's not. But he's 27. He's played a lot of maps. Like it is pretty much now or never. I think 2023. I think if the Glaive doesn't improve individually and calling, probably both. I think they're probably gonna have blame FIGL by next year. Probably. I think there needs to be a change for Glaive to stay in this team.
Which is maybe a scary prospect of Blame
Yeah, it's
FIGLing.
terrifying.
Like, and not in a positive way either, because I think you're the first person to say that like Blame F without calling is just a much better player. So potentially you lose the aspects of Blame F that are positives for Astralis right now.
Mm. And there are lots of positives with Blamer. Like he's got the reputation. We know he's got the reputation, and he does eco frag a lot, and he does bait a lot. But you just can't argue against someone who kills that many people that consistently. Like you could get any player baiting and eco fragging as much as he does. They
I
still wouldn't kill
couldn't
as
it?
much people. You wouldn't kill as many people as Blamer. You know you wouldn't.
No, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. I could argue against it because when I could make a note in the games and find out how many kills are in rounds where the round's already over and he doesn't then win the round, you know, like one of our old mates, it's
Mm.
that's where you have to question it because
T side, yeah, there's an argument. There's an argument on T side, but CT side, he is one of the best players in the world.
oh, absolutely, I won't contest that.
And it's just one of those things. I don't think because I think they literally in the Hunden files there was a leak. There was a leak, and either Hunden or Casper Fit said like the reason Blame F is a good signing is because he can learn from Lucas, like sort of like the Boomich and Zeus thing, but like a slightly different level of it. So then they can eventually Blame F will be the IGL because Glaive and Zip aren't going to be around forever, and and that's sort of the long term plan. It's the long term succession is that Blame F will be the new franchise Astralis player. And it's one of those things. It's like Glaive. When you look at Glaive's IGLing since that 2019 team, like, has he shown that much adaptation? Like, we credit him a lot with along with Zonic for changing the game like quite significantly. Like, you can look at CS in a pre-Astralis and post-Astralis lens if you want to, and then you look at this team now, and it's hard to see that identity anymore. Like, you look at KD, like Heroic is Cadian's team. Like, they play like Cadian wants them to. And Astralis, they just sort of they play very similarly to all the other big teams, and they just don't kill as many people. Like I don't know what you think on that.
Um, well, I think that's the interesting point, right? Because and it like Glaive versus Karrigan is a conversation for another day, but everyone talks about Glaive as the GOAT IGL because it's like, oh yeah, but he won 4 majors. He stopped them from being chokers. They won a Grand Slam. Look at the way he reinvented Counter Strike, and all of that is fair. But like, you can reinvent Counter Strike, but if you then can't keep up with the meta that you created, are you even that good? Like, you realize something that other people didn't realize. Great, you are an innovator, like, and you deserve respect for that. But as soon as everyone else caught up, what's happened to Astralis?
I mean, it's hard to talk about because I think COVID is a big factor as well, and a lot of the refresh stuff around that time probably held them back a little bit. Because if you think about every other big team, they go through a player break, everyone's watched their demos, and they're just worse. Like every other big team. Astralis is still like how many other teams have survived a player break? Astralis survived 3 or 4 player breaks and came back and won trophies. So there's definitely something there. I think it's probably pretty inarguable. His individual level has dropped off a lot, which is not always an issue for IGLs, but I think Glaive is used to being a fragging IGL, so that's probably quite difficult. And
Well, I
also his
think that's
motivation.
that's one thing with Glaive. Like we're talking about his individual level dropping off, but we're not talking about the level to which it's dropped off too much because the level Glaive was at was it was freakish. We're talking about him being like
Was
one
eighth
off.
in 2018. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're talking about him being, and that is because he was a CT star. Like no IGL for like ever has been what Glaive was in 2018. So
Mm.
that really does like kind of put a lot of emphasis on this issue where other, like a lot of not enough people are talking about the fact that G2's run recently, Hooksy is like 0.15 higher rating than normal, like consistently.
Mm.
Like
I mean, this
and
is
and that is a big thing because when
yeah,
he's not botting out, then that floor of G2 is elevated by so much. The difference was with Astralis is that Glaive was the ceiling, not the floor. Whereas now he
yeah,
is.
and it's also if we're being real, like it is a case of when you win every match, like your rating is inflated. Like Hooksy is having more impact on an eye test, but he's probably not like a significantly better player now than he was then. Like it's always hard to tell with stats like that for players like that, I think, who go from losing quite a lot to winning quite a lot. And do you think they're winning more? I think they're probably winning more because JKS is overperforming right now, but that's probably
Oh no, that's
not for
absolutely
now.
that's absolutely why they're winning more. But when the difference between Hooksy, like when you look at when the roster first formed and how much like they did struggle in certain games, Hooksy would always have like 6 kills in those games. How
Yeah,
how like frequent is it now that you get to the end of a game and Hooksy's 6 and 20? Because it's not that often.
yeah. No, and you're right. And this is what we were saying again with the Glaive Zipix angle. You have room for one of them. You have room for one of them. And the Zipix one, I think it's pretty criminal how long Zipix has been in this team, and the fact that the Richard Lewis thing came out again, and he signed a 4-year deal in 2021, and it came out that Hunden was making teams in like the summer of that year, and he had like Ezatag was in a few drafts. There was Bubsky instead of Zip in a few drafts. Like apparently Config and Blame F didn't want to play with Bubsky. That was in there. And then Eztag sort of isn't mentioned again. So it's like there was clearly an idea to transition him out, and then just a few months later they're giving him a 4-year contract. So it's just I just don't understand the logic behind that because
Well,
now
you got
they're
to
in a
retain
position.
identity, right?
That's one aspect of it maybe, but now you've got a guy on a 4-year deal with no reason to be motivated, who was never that strong individually anyway, and you just can't bench him because it's so expensive to bench him, and it's I don't know what they're going to do to be honest to fix that because you can say that there's literally people like Valder and Eztag are free agents or benched right now. Like their buyout's going to be a little bit less than it would be normally. Um, but instead you've got Zipix for another 2.5 years, like locked in, and it's not worth benching him for that much money because like it's just a sinkhole. It's that 4-year deal that he signed when it was quite obvious already that he was not the same player. Like on LAN, since LAN came back, he's got I looked it up earlier. I think it's 0.59 kills per round since LAN came back, including IEM Cologne. Like 0.59. That's like what is that? Like 16, 17 games in a 30 round game? 16, 17 kills in a 30 round game. Like it's just he's not he has fallen off an absolute cliff and it's just one of those. He's not even winning the clutches anymore. Like he's the type. It's a strange fall off because the player that you look at, you're like, he's so cerebral. Like he's not winning any of these clutches because of his aim. He's just body shotting people in the back, right? So why he's fallen off this much is it is hard to work out. It is hard to work out.
Well, I
But
think it's probably something that's actually comparable to Glaive's IGLing. You know, Astralis,
falling out with the meta.
yeah, like Astralis changed the game. They established a new meta, and like the thing with Astralis back then is that you couldn't you couldn't escape the meta that they were imposing upon the game. It was
Mm.
it was just the next evolution, and you can't run from evolution. It's not possible. Eventually, it will just happen. So when you've got a player like this who's then exploiting everything within that meta, of course, like he's going to be successful. But then when that meta, like when that evolution cycle completes and that meta becomes just that is just how the game is played, it's always gonna be like more difficult for him to have the same success.
Yeah, and to be fair to Zip, he's already had like unbelievable longevity. Like he was playing in 2012, 2013. Like I think he was in the top 20 in 2013, back when he was more of a star. It's just one of those things. It's just I think sentimentality or the lack of a better option has just got the better of Astralis, and now they're locked in because you can see like we were talking about the fourth star. Like maybe Valder or Ezatag aren't that fourth star with Glaive as the fifth. Like maybe they aren't that, but like it would help a little bit to not have someone who's getting like 0.85s most tournaments.
Well, so here's the thing, right? And you've got to look at it either way. In whether he gets benched before because they just say enough's enough, or 2024 rolls around, this contract will be the last contract that Zipnik signs with Astralis, like
Yeah,
without a doubt, because he's not good enough, and they know that, and everyone else knows that, and there's no way that it can be allowed to continue. So then, you kind of have to look now at what what will be the answer when the time comes. There's S Tag, who in those Zip kind of roles has always, at least in my eyes, been underrated because
mm.
later on in his career, or like in the
And the only
last couple of
time,
years, he's been tried in different roles, but he is very good in them.
yeah, and the last time he was ever actually good, like think about how highly rated he was after he was under Glaive last time. Like it's something that makes sense, I think, is just to have a look at. But I've got a more rogue shout for you.
Oh,
You know their academy team has
oh
been doing
God,
quite well recently.
yes.
Yeah, you're not gonna like this. So their
Tell me.
academy team's their best player in 2023 so far is a guy called Alkets, right? And guess where he plays in Mirage?
See the Bianca?
He's the B anchor. He
Wow.
plays a lot of Zips roles. He's
Oh, a
got
little
like
JDC.
yeah, I think because that okay, you're still paying him the same amount if you just chuck him in for an event. I think if they bomb the major, I think there's not a good reason to not give this Alkets guy a chance. He lurks on T side, got a 1.24 T side rating this year, and he's like,
Okay.
and that's not it's against like top 50 teams probably. It's not like bottom of the barrel. But like he seems decent. He seems decent enough that you at least try him in prac or something. Because you don't have to spend loads of money. Because I understand why you don't want to spend loads of money on changing your support player because the upside is not really there, and is it recession? Astralis don't spend money anyway, apart from on device apparently. So
Nah,
so
especially
it's one of
early on.
those. I think that could be fun. I mean that could be fun. You actually try and use this talent team that are actually doing really well right now. The IGL2 Patty seems to be quite good, although he's more of a shoey type IGL where he gets a lot of the star roles. Um,
My boy.
so I'm not sure Patty's going to be the one for Astralis, but this Alkets guy seems very good on the little I've watched of him. He seems quite
Well, I
like
think.
worth trying in those roles.
Well, I think like in that case, yeah, he sounds like a very solid shout. I think Valde, honestly, times been and gone for Valde. Like me and you, we've always been big advocates of, like, even when they were good, we were like, yeah, but it would just be more fun if Valde was in for Zip.
Yeah,
Like, we always said that. Like, I think Valde's gone. I think so. In that case, like, when you're looking at like, oh, what's the team that's going to have longevity? You either, yeah, you do promote from within, or your only answer really for a Zip type player is Xiphon. And I know that Xiphon's history with Astralis isn't, the most fantastic, but
Mm. Benched on
it
Sprout as well
yeah, but that was
for a short while.
just a very strange
Yeah, it looks
little
like
era.
literally because of roles maybe, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you don't know. With his reputation, it's hard to know.
But so, in that case, like Xiphon probably is the best option otherwise
Okay.
for that kind of player.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an option they should be looking at, but I think they could have got him when Copenhagen Flames were doing very badly. So I think that was probably the time they're going to get him. You could, because I think the thing, another option is you put Blame F back lurking T side. You do cut Glaive and put him back into the anchor roles, and then you get an aggressive rifler. You get a Stare, or you get even a Roy if you want to be ultra short term. Like Roy is very, very good at the game.
Very old.
Um, he's very old, but so is Glaive, so is Zip, and he's actually. I think it's hard to talk about age about a player like Roy because they only got like a few years of proper LAN experience. Like they're not burnt out like someone like Dupree who's only 20, 28, 29, but he's been playing CS at the top level since he was 18. Like it's a different type of thing when you're talking about age. And I think you just need that little burst of like a little bit more aggression in the T sides. Glaive, Roy, Pack, Blame F and Buzz, like it's fine. It is fine. And then CT side, Buzz and Glaive could do a lot of the anchoring. Like it's I don't think it's when you're looking at replacement for Zip, you know what they need is more firepower. I don't think they should only be looking at players who are known as support players because I think if you look at most of the good teams, you've got an IGL support player, at least on CT side, and then you've got four like proper fraggers.
Okay,
So I
so
think that's the route.
I've got a question for you. They they remove Zip
Hmm.
and they get um they promote from within or they get Xiphon. They look for a like for like change. What then if nothing changes with Glaive and also nothing changes with Buzz? What are you looking to do then?
Hmm. See, that's the if you pro. This is the thing. It's almost like the Cloud9 move. Like Zipix still has a tag, or Valda or Xiphon or something. Like it's an upgrade, but the reason I would probably not do something like that is because it doesn't shift the needle unless what you're saying comes to fruition and Glaive does get instantly better or Buzz because I think they have locked themselves in a little bit because they've got 3 week fraggers and if you make 3 roster changes like it's a lot, right? So I think long term plan has to be you keep Glaive. Glaive has very, very good synergy with Device for sure. Like Device has always spoken very highly of Glaive. Like that's an option. Um, I think it would be Buzz. Buzz would be the next one to go. I think it would be similar to how they treated Lucky, probably. We'll give him 6 months, and if he's just not good on LAN, like he's shown promise, but if he's still just not good on LAN against the best teams, like you do have to look back to the market. And I think there is a world where maybe I don't know how long Stair's contract is, but obviously you're never going to buy anyone out of Sprout. So Stair and Xiphon, like you can put them in your dream team as much as you want. They play for Sprout, and Sprout don't let players go. So it's a tricky one because you need firepower, but firepower's expensive, and Shards don't have all that much money. So I think what they're going to be hoping for is a bit of a miracle on Glaive's fragging and a bit of a miracle on Glaive's IGLing as well, because he needs to get Buzz to a good level, which Glaive has never really done. Glaive has never really been the type of IGL to pick up someone who isn't very good at the game and teaches them how to play the game. Like in Heroic, he was with bad players and he said, "Snappy UIGL, I want to be a star in this team." And then he got to Astralis and he couldn't really get Kiebi consistency. Like he wasn't very good at molding that role player. What he was good at was taking Magisk, who was Dignitas's best player and Optic's best player, and just turning him into like a solid third piece. Like Glaive is not the type of IGL I think who has the patience for someone like Buzz if he continues to struggle. So I think they need ready-made products, and I don't think Astralis is the type of org to get those ready-made products. So I just don't really see a way out of this situation.
No, I agree. I think So I think when you look at Astralis right now, you're still talking about limited play time, whether they're playing online or whatever. Like
Hmm.
online don't count. It don't count, especially when if you look at some of the teams they're playing. Like these teams,
Yeah.
they don't mean anything. But if we look at them in that land setting, and we look again at them after the RMR, after the major, after Dallas or Cologne. What we might see is a team on the equivalent level of a Mouse, of a Fnatic, of like one of these, of a complexity, of one of these, like, we're going to be around 12th to 8th, and we're never going to go higher unless we have one run that pits us above other people. Like, that's realistically where Astralis is going to be at. But it feels like the real problem with Astralis is that there just isn't any hope for them to go higher than that.
Yeah. And it's the Arsenal after 2004. It's the I don't know, Liverpool after 1990s. Like it is hard to have a dynasty and then have the pressure of the dynasty behind you and then build a second team. And it's hard because they've got the two identities. Like they've got the like Blame F is clearly what they see as the future of Astralis, and then they've got Glaive and Zip still. So it's like a molding of the two. And you're right. Like you look at the team and you think probably like playoffs is a good result for them at any big event, at any tier one event. Playoffs is a good result, but like it's Astralis. We're talking about Astralis. Like this
And we're not.
isn't something that
The thing is, we're
should
not
happen.
just talking about Astralis now. We're talking about an Astralis with fucking device on it.
Yeah, and Blame F. Like they've got the two of the three best Danish players. I'd say
Who's the third?
Stan. Well,
Yeah.
Stan is better
I
than
did
both of
wonder
them, I
if you were going to
think.
say him or Shush, but.
No, no, no. Ship sailed on that one as well, by the way. Jesus. Oh, Astralis. So, but what can you do? Like, it's going to be tricky for them because Denmark's a small country and they're never going to get any heroic players, clearly. So, like, they're picking from quite a small pool. When you look at, when we look back in 2, 3 years at like the downfall of Astralis, like the point at which the downfall started is probably during COVID when they stuck with the old lineup for a bit too long because they obviously wanted to see it play on LAN again. Um, and then they didn't get to see it play on LAN again because Device left because Device got fed up with it. So it's hard to look at this team and then have the same expectations as the old team. I think to be fair to them, you probably do need to disconnect it. But
No,
yeah,
you
you're
absolutely
gonna
do. You absolutely
yeah
do.
and
This isn't the same team. It's barely even the same organization. Like,
yeah. But I think the thing with Glaive is that Carrigan is now most people's go. I think he's been yours for a while. You got
yeah,
cooked for that a while ago,
I did get
but
cooked for it.
you did. But he's got so many trophies with so many different teams, and I think Glaive is Glaive is still on Astralis. He's still collecting those paychecks. He's just, and I think this year, like he's really like you can imagine the narrative shifting if Buzz is the next big thing, or if Blameth and Device just have an Axel and Shiro year and just carry this team. But you can also see the more likely outcome, which is he continues to not kill anyone. They don't cut Zippix because it's too expensive to cut Zippix. Buzz is like okay, but not good enough to be the third best player on a team that can win a tournament. Blame F still gets criticized for the way he plays, and Device is not as good as he was in 2019. And then suddenly you've got a team that's 12th for the entire year, and they look close to playoffs. They might win a map against Na'Vi, but they don't beat Na'Vi, and and that is a shame. And that is a shame because
Yeah, of
Astralis
course
should
it
be a
is.
household brand. They should be.
And when you consider the players that they've got, and I'll reluctantly include Blame F,
Mm.
uh, those two players do not deserve to be on a team that ever is outside of the top 20. And I think it's even fair to say that those two players, maybe it's too early to say for Device, but he has been pretty good, don't deserve to be on a team outside of the top 5. But um, I have one more question I want to ask you before we wrap this up.
Hmm.
How different? would what we were saying right now be if Glaive and Carrigan swap places?
What's a glaive to phase?
Well, ignore that part because that's irrelevant. But yeah, if Carrigan was the IGL of Astralis, how different are Astralis right now?
Ooh, well, the style is very different, but also I think Carrigan could do a lot more with a lot less than Glaive. I think based on history, I think that's probably fair to say. Um, and it's an interesting hypothetical. Um, don't see it happening. I think Device and Carrigan disagree on a lot of things about the game, which is why Carrigan left Astralis in 2016. Um, so it's tricky. I don't think they're that much better. I think they probably are more likely to have the odd upset, but I think even Carrigan needs more firepower than two players. I think.
But would, and I know you've basically already said this, but how much of an upgrade would you see out of Buzz with Carrigan? Because I think that's where it actually
What
becomes a
about
more interesting
what
hypothetical.
about Snappy?
What about Snappy? Oh,
Could Snappy turn Buzz into something?
I mean, if you look at what he's done with heroic players and Ents players, and I don't even know if he had anything in between. Probably, yeah.
Mm. But I think
Realistically,
it's
yeah. I mean, fucking Snappy accidentally convinced people S-Tag was a fucking star. Like,
mm. Well, Glaive did that as well, to be fair. But it's one of those
no,
things.
that
I think
narrative was long before
Astralis,
Glaive.
narrative-wise, if Astralis signed Snappy, that's like a confirmation we're the second best Danish team now. Like I think because of the rep Snappy has, for whatever reason, like that's the confirmation. Like he's the guy who can you can punch up with Snappy, right? So I don't see them making that move, but yeah, I think they'd be a better team. I think he's a better IGL for the last 2 years. I think he's shown that. Um, but again, Glaive is Astralis for in a lot of ways. So I think they will give him at least an extra year. And if, but yeah, this major cycle with the RMR, that is absolutely crunch time for Glaive and Zipex to and Buzz. They've got three people on the chopping block ahead of the major, and God, they didn't even make the last one. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't make this one, something really does have to change. But I have a feeling they will. I don't think they'll do well in Paris, but
Hmm.
I think they'll be in Paris.
Yeah, I think they're. It's all very dramatic right now, but I think they're a better team than their results suggest because they just haven't. Their ranking suggests. I mean, because they just haven't played at those big events. They haven't had that chance. I think they're top 10, top 15, and Device and Blame F. I think will improve over the course of this year, and we'll see. But yeah, that ceiling doesn't look too high.
No, it certainly does not. Anyway, that has been Astralis Deconstructed. Hope you enjoyed. Stick around with Insight for more CSGO and CS2 related content.
CS:GO's better though, and
Of
always will
course,
be.
always. Fuck CS2.
Always. Yeah. CS:GO.
Go game.